for June 27th, 2025. Joining today's presser is Mr. Aubrey C. Norton, Member of Parliament, leader of the People's National Congress Reform and a Partnership for National Unity. Also joining is Mr. Elson Lowe, Treasurer of the PNCR and economist. Today's press statement will be read by the leader.
The APNU Coalition's Agriculture Sector and Food Security Plan will ensure Guyanese have enough to eat and to export. Despite a small population and an abundance of fertile land, Guyana is still unable to produce enough food to feed itself. We are a net importer of food, with a food import bill that keeps climbing, meaning that the Grand PPP plan to cut food imports by 25% by 2025 has failed. Our agriculture sector continues to underachieve. National food self-sufficiency is a fading dream. The exorbitant cost of food restricts most Guyanese to one meal a day and to low nutrition diets. The PPP has been in office for 28 of the last 33 years. Even with 4 oil budgets, they have failed in agriculture where it matters most. 1, reducing food poverty and food inflation. 2, increasing the quality, variety, and availability of food. And 3, feeding the nations. They have failed in every area. The APNU Coalition, as the next government, will reverse this situation and rescue agriculture in Guyana. In our strategic plan, food production and food security are 2 of our national priorities. We will make food affordable and available for every Guyanese family. We will ensure national food security at the household and national levels. We will make the agro sector one of the main driving forces in our non-oil economy. We will make farming a lucrative business for current farmers, youths, large investors, and others. We will make every region self-sustainable in agriculture. To achieve these and other goals, the APNU coalition government will focus its attention on over 20 key strategic goals, such as 1, expand, upgrade, and make the drainage and irrigation system more effective to address infrastructure gaps, water needs of farmers, flood control, unpredictable weather patterns, and the challenges of climate change. One recent FAO study of local farmers found drainage to be the largest inhibiting factor in farming in Guyana. It is in this context, therefore, we will establish a special Ministry of Drainage and Irrigation to address this question. 2, we will make more agricultural lands available of adequate size, location, access, and with good supporting infrastructure. We will modernize and streamline the land tenure and ownership system to increase security of title, ensure easy access to bank credit, and to simplify sales, rentals, and bequeathing of land. 4, expand, upgrade, and support transportation and infrastructure, such as access roads, farm-to-market roads, cargo ferries, dams, wharves, and ports, bridges, and airstrips. 5, increase access to affordable farm credit through the creation of a state-owned development and investment bank and an expanded small business facility to farmers of all sizes. 6, prioritize the building of a fertilizer plant using our natural gas resources and make fertilizer cheaply available countrywide. 7, promote crop diversification based on our comparative advantages, market assessments, and ease of adaptation, and incentivize the cultivation of more nutritious crops, such as fruits, beans, and vegetables, to help promote health and nutrition security. 8. Promote agro-processing and value-added production by providing tax incentives for agro-processors, engaging in aggressive sales promotion, and through a network of community-based state-owned processing facilities. Expand and upgrade post-harvest infrastructure services through a network of silos and warehouses, mobile and fixed refrigerated storage, drying facilities, and just in time delivery approaches. Such storage will be critical for the rice sector and the meat industry. 10. Set and implement a national agriculture research agenda to set priorities, increase applications of results, remove duplications and repetitions, increase coordination among researchers, and capitalize on international research data banks and findings. 11. Implement a national livestock development plan that includes reducing feed costs and improving nutrition, disease control, and breeding flock sustainability, and education and extension services, among others. 12. Support the offshore fishing industry and scale up aquaculture and fish rearing to meet local and export markets. Fish is still too expensive in Guyana. 13. Increase the biosecurity of agriculture production to preempt and prevent attacks by pests and other threats. 14. Intensify the use of field technology in agriculture, such as drone and satellite technology for precision spraying, seeding, and fertilizing of fields, real-time monitoring and mapping, and inventorizing. These are some of our strategies to transform the agri-sector and increase food security. As I stated earlier, we intend to succeed where it matters, ensuring food is adequate, affordable, and available for all households. Let me next provide our general position on the sugar and rice industries. The rice industry. We continue to have conversation with rice farmers and other industry stakeholders. In April, for instance, a large team and I visited farmers and others on the Essequibo coast. As the next government, we will immediately address the critical challenges in the rice industry, such as low yields, diseases, market availability, access to credit, lack of storage, competing land uses, unfair competition, and discriminatory practices. Our intention, for instance, to build storage bond and a fertilizer plant to provide cheap fertilizer will directly and positively impact the industry. We will address the three critical aspects of the industry: production, storage, and distribution. Where necessary, we as a government will intervene and take part not only as a policy maker, but also as an investor, partner, purchaser, low-cost creditor, mediator, and guarantor. Internationally, the rice industry is reinventing itself by introducing reforms, innovations, and investment to bring the sector into a new era of new techniques, higher yields, low carbon emissions, and better nutrition. We will keep abreast with these developments and implement changes as needed. The sugar industry. Our main aim is to revitalize and refashion Gaisuko into an entity with several viable and practical financial arms, including sugarcane production. To that end, we will diversify its portfolio by using its assets, such as its land and workforce, for new business ventures, including aquaculture, food crops, manufacturing, and housing development. For us, therefore, Gaisuko need not remain exclusively an agriculture-based entity. With investment in training and equipment, for instance, Gaisuko can become one of the largest builders of homes and communities in Guyana. Much potential also exists where the sugarcane plant itself can be utilized to produce not only raw and processed sugar, but also ethanol, livestock feed, bagasse board, and the co-generation of electricity. These opportunities need not await only private investors, but can be ventures the state could undertake singularly or jointly. Several of the strategies we outlined above for the agriculture sector and food security will also help a new Gaisuko, such as prioritizing the building of fertilizer plant and closing the time gap between research results and commercial applications. With these reforms, a new Gaisuko will attract more workers as compensation, jobs, job opportunities, and working conditions will definitely improve. We believe that Gaisuko can become a net contributor to national revenues rather than drain on the nation's resources. I thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I will take questions on the press statement.
Can you detail a bit more what exactly is the?
Mr. Shabral, you're muted.
I'm asking Mr. Norton if you could please detail a bit more what is the proposed recovery plan for Gaisuko.
Now, I don't know what you mean in detail, but what we have virtually said there, and I should reread it for you, unless you miss it. Let me just go to Gaisuko.
No, I wanted to add some meat to the bones.
So which bones?
That you read.
Well, I think there is meat here. Look, we're saying we will make Gaisuko viable, not solely based on sugar. We are saying there are alternative areas that Gaisuko could be involved in. We didn't mention aquaponics, but it is one possibility. We mentioned aquaculture, which is another possibility. And we also said that it doesn't have to restrict itself to sugar. Apart from its diversification in agriculture, you can train the existing workforce in construction, etc. And not only Gaisuko, but there are other industries that can become involved in large-scale production of housing. This government housing policy has failed. It basically is a land distribution policy with no mechanisms for people to actually own a house and build a house. And so we're saying that with the demand for housing, we can take elements, we can take Gaisuko and transform it into being involved in other services that are lucrative, practical, and can benefit the people of Guyana.
Mrs. Shabral, if I,
You have any?
Mrs.
I was going to ask if you have any specific statistical targets in mind, given what you said.
We will outline all our targets in our manifesto.
Mrs. Shabral, we would also, of course, remind Guyanese that if you look at the coalition's performance from 2015 onward, you saw much better performance in Gaisuko. You've actually seen a decline in Gaisuko in some years, something like 60% less sugar being produced. And you've seen actually the government undershoot its targets by as much as 60%. So that just I think first of all gives you a baseline in terms of the level of performance at minimum you would anticipate. But we also want to highlight to the Guyanese public something that the PVP has really missed, which Lena mentioned, which is this question of generating free fertilizer. That, of course, comes from being able to make use of natural gas, the natural gas fertilizer plant. The PVP has, I think, really dropped the ball on this particular issue because, of course, the pipeline to provide that natural gas has been finished since the end of 2024. And yet they've put in place no systems to make use of that, even as the gas energy plant eventually comes on stream. So what has happened is that agriculture has been stifled by that lack of preparation and foresight. Gaisuko and other agricultural areas can really benefit from low-cost fertilizer with respect to food. That brings food prices down between 20 and 30% right off the bat. And of course, if Gaisuko is going to be diversifying and so on, and it has access to low-cost fertilizer, then that clearly looks like a real boost in terms of the productivity of Gaisuko. Now, if you can increase the productivity of Gaisuko, it means you can pay workers more, that workers can have a better life. We're focused not just on keeping Gaisuko workers in the existing systems for political reasons, but rather on looking at ways to improve their lives, to move them forward just the same as we're looking to improve the lives of all Guyanese.
Dennis, I want to read for you what we said that suggests to me meat. Much potential also exists where the sugarcane plant itself can be utilized to produce not only raw and processed sugar, but also ethanol, livestock feed, bagasse board, and the cogeneration of electricity. I would assume that is meat, unless you have another definition for meat.
I want to ask a follow, please, I'm the chair of the press conference. How does the proposed diversification plan in 2025 differ from the diversification plan that had been pursued back in the 1980s, and the president of Guyana recently announced a diversification plan?
Now, there are a number of reasons why it will be different. First, at present, there are the resources to do it. When we were doing it in the 1980s, we had a lot of success in the 70s and 80s. Don't let us forget that when we came to government in 1964, we weren't producing the food that we did. By the time we left government in 1992, we were producing it. It is this government that destroyed agriculture. So there are now the resources to do it. The second thing that is going to be different, we're not going to seek to control it politically. We will outline the policies and bring the experts who can manage those things in the way that will allow it to succeed. A lot of the problems you find with the present government's approach to anything, including diversification, is the attempt to control in politically every aspect of the institution that results in the problem. The third thing we will do is bring in more skillful people, people with the skill set to assist. We do put an important premium on human resource development, as we have said regularly, and so that will be a focus. Also, we will be training people in different countries where they can learn and come back and help in the process. So the professionalization of it, we intend to make it data-driven. And so I think those will be distinctly different from what the president is proposing.
Thank you. Ms. Svetlana Marshall.
Swetland Marshall News Source. Mr. Norton, with regards to the plans for Gaisuko, just a clarity, is it that the plans include, is it that, I'm trying to frame it correctly, but would it call for the closure of any estates to facilitate the diversification of the industry? What Gaisuko does. Also, would you look to privatize, if in part or whole, Gaisuko or the estates?
All right, let me deal with them. On the question of privatization, if privatization is going to make it viable, we will. But at this stage, I don't think we have done an assessment to decide whether we will privatize it. That's the first thing I want to say. The second thing I want to say, not one sugar worker will be fired. What we are seeking to do is to refashion the industry, retrain sugar workers so that they can be utilized in new ventures. On the question of closing sugar estates, it is well known that the PPP closed more sugar estates than us, though they try to say something different. But I want to say this about closed sugar estates. I do not want to pronounce on that at this stage. Again, it is dependent on you getting in there, seeing the options, and then decide if we need to close more or we need to continue with what exists and improve them. But the bottom line as a policy position is we do not have the intention of firing workers. We have the intention of reorganizing the sugar industry to utilize sugar workers, improve their competence, etc., and give them new vistas for them to get a high quality life.
Thank you. Mr. Adam Harris.
Good morning, everybody. This time we're talking about sugar here. The coalition government did close some sugar, downsize the sugar industry. The government came in on the promise that it was going to reopen some of the sugar estates. Can you say which of these reopened sugar estates that you find possible that you would keep in the dispensation of your government?
If I listen to our shadow minister when he was outlining what is the state of those estate, I think it was Albion that he dealt with specifically, and it was in a terrible state of disrepair, etc. From what I heard, I do not believe the government has done anything to make it viable. But again, I do not want to pronounce at this stage, but it doesn't look likely to me that it could continue as is. And I don't think we should just see closing of sugar estates. We should see the general plan to revitalize and refashion, and then you take action to do that, which might or might not include closing estates.
But sir, the government 5 years ago said it was going to reopen sugar estates. Are you in a position to say which of those sugar estates were reopened and what are the state now?
As far as I know, the only one was Albion, and Albion is a disaster. It is producing far less sugar. It's uneconomical, and so one has to be very, very clear in one's mind. This government is incompetent. And even when they were saying they were going to reopen sugar industries, we knew that they really couldn't do it. And so we didn't take them seriously. We saw it as one of the things that will sink them and cause them to go out of power, because they stupidly were given false hopes when they knew full well the problems of the industry, and it wasn't as easy, apart from the fact that they brought a man who knew nothing but sugar, put him in charge, and rather than sweeten it, it put a bitter taste.
Adam, you need to look no further than the fact that that the government has reopened an estate, but is producing far less sugar. Now, if that doesn't signify that their enterprise is completely failed, what would? At minimum, you would anticipate that they'd be able to maintain the level of production. And if you're opening another estate, presumably that is to produce more sugar, right? What that says to me is that the government has not been genuine in its intention to turn around this estate and this industry. And as a consequence, you've seen the industry continue to decline. We remind the Guyanese public that none other than former President Ramatar questioned whether or not the PDP was genuine. This is only a year, I think, into their office, in terms of their efforts in the sugar industry. And it has turned out that the performance really to me is unbelievable. At every time that you question that performance, they come up with some new excuses. This is broken, it's rain, it's the weather, it's this, that. To us, it is clear that a reform that actually relies on data, that actually relies on a good plan, must be implemented rather than the guesswork that we're seeing currently.
Thank you.
Quickly, one last part,
Go ahead.
one last thing. You talked about Albion, but I remember distinctly
Rose Hall.
that there was also a focus on Rose
Rose
Hall
Hall.
Sugar Estate.
Yes.
Can you say what the state of that was? It was supposed to be kicking by now.
As I understand it, and I think our shadow minister dealt with it in the parliament, it is in a terrible state. It's not viable as presently constituted, and therefore it's also a drain on the economy.
Thank you. Ms. Svetlana Marshall.
Mr. Norton, when you spoke just now, you said that the PPP brought somebody who knows nothing about sugar. Have you already identified, should you take up the government come September, somebody who's capable of treating with the industry to ensure that it is profitable and the diversification plan that you referenced to is effectively implemented? I recall under the APNU administration, there was a white paper talk about right sizing and downsizing the sugar industry. And there was also plans in that downsizing and right sizing it to diversify the industry. I think there was a special unit set up. However, much of those plans never got off. I guess the government was cut short, but we're still speaking about the same set of issues that came up in 2015.
Okay, let me start here by saying there are still people around with the knowledge to manage Gaisuku. Because the PPP government has politicized Gaisuku and made all the appointees political, the real persons with the technical know-how were not in the industry. We intend to re-engage them and bring them back in the industry. Some of them are overseas and express a willingness to come and help with Gaisuku. And I think we will continue with what was intended under the APNU AFC. That is to establish a separate diversification unit that focus specifically on the non-sugar elements and diversify it into a viable industry. Now, I don't want to spend a lot of time on why it didn't happen, but we had only 3 budgets basically. And for like 2 years, those things couldn't happen, but we have always had the plans. We are clear in our minds where we need to take the industry. We believe the human resources are around to do it. We believe that the financial resources are around to do it. It's just a question of our implementing and ensure that we have a revitalized and diversified Gaisuku.
Thank you. The floor is still open for questions.
I think also you should not leave a lot of these things hanging. If you look at the general presentation we would have made, you would recognize that we are talking about storage. Because a lot of Ghana problems sometimes, I was in Barakara, and when you're coming out, people were giving away the pumpkins because there is no entity to buy it, store it, and prepare it for export. We intend to do those kinds of things to ensure that we can export to the Caribbean, but it demands some infrastructure which we will put in place.
Thank you. I'll also open the floor for any other questions.
Yeah, you were outside of the
Yes.
statement.
Yes, Mr. Harris, you can go
Mr.
ahead.
Norton.
1 second, Mr.
Go
Shabal.
on, Dennis, go on.
Mr. Norton, I would like to know, since over the past few days, whether there have been any further engagements, whether formally or informally, with the AFC with respect to coalition before nomination day, and if so, what has been the outcome of those engagements? And also, well, depending on your response to that, I have a follow-up.
Thanks for your question, but your question needs context. We did not have further discussion, but if you are aware of the process of submitting symbols, you would know once you would have submitted a symbol, you then agree to be, as a political party, based on that symbol. And if you decide that you are going to coalesce, you will end up in a situation where you have to fall under one of the symbols because no joint symbol for the APNU AFC was submitted. So the short answer to your question is there wasn't any discussion. And I do believe if you had an understanding of the process that would have led there, then the question would have been framed differently. And that is there any scope now that the symbols have been submitted? Is there any scope for engagement and probably working together? There is always scope for that.
Has that scope been explored since?
If what has been explored?
The scope of working together post symbol submission. I
would say to you, it will be explored, but I don't know that it has been explored.
Mr. Northwell, I would like to take you back to a missive on April 17, from the AFC to the APNU, which said, our humble considered opinion, a coalition led by Mr. Apnu will not have the requisite national appeal and the likability necessary for national mobilization to be victorious at the polls. Part one of the question, what's your reaction to that? And part two, that is, that kind of expression by the AFC serve to really put a lid on the prospects of a coalition submission of symbol, essentially the straw that broke the camel's back.
I think the comments by the AFC can be considered passé. And I can say to you, since we have indicated we're launching our campaign, etc., we have had a flow of support, and we will let the people decide what happens moving forward.
Were you hurt by that, though?
If I was what?
Were you hurt by that expression from the AFC?
I would just say to you this. I've been in politics long, and you have to have thick skin. And I don't know that anything could have hurt me. I've been around so long. If you have to deal with Jack, what could the AFC do to hurt you?
Thank you, Miss.
We're here to trying to strike a coalition agreement to move the AFC. That's why I'm asking whether it hurt you and the prospects of getting that coalition board.
This thing is not about me. It's about a political party, a political movement. I have no need to focus on me. If you want me to deal with a question of electability, I can say I am more qualified than many who purport to be presidential candidates. Electability to me presupposes that you have mass support. I'm well aware that the PNC and I have mass support, and so electability is not in question. And like I said on the Enrico Wilford program, if you are focusing on form, then I will lead you in the direction of content. Form brings little or nothing with it. It is content that matters.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll take Mr. Adam Harris, then Ms. Svetlana Marshall.
So my question is simple. Already, it seems as though you have compiled your list of candidates for the elections. Because you have been going about with some members. Would you care to disclose the identity of the other members?
Well, it's like 100 of them. I can, I don't know that I want to disclose that here, but I can tell you there are going to be some interesting young people. Um, Ronald Daniels, for instance, will be on our list. We think he is a very good attorney and a young man with a lot of potential. Um, so I would say before the launching, we will give you a better insight. But we do have some young people and some matured people who are going to be on our list, and I think can constitute a matured core and a youth core that can be mentored by the matured core, and the youth core bringing to bear the interests and views of the youth so that we have a team that is in touch with the reality in Guyana.
And quickly, sir, what is the likelihood of you incorporating people from outside the list? For example, in the run up to the elections, names like Carl Greenwich came up. And then there was the talk that you were upset by people who mounted a challenge to the leadership, people like Roysdale Ford. Can we see these people in your new cabinet?
Well, yes, you will see Roysdale Ford. I don't know what you mean by these people, but you'll see Roysdale Ford. The question of where Carl Greenwich goes is a decision for Carl Greenwich. The last time I engaged Carl, he did indicate he wants to stay and do what he was doing, and this is um, since I became leader of the opposition. So there are going to be new people. I can assure you that Roysdale will be there, among others.
Thank you. Ms.
Mr.
Wetland.
Norton, since we're talking about who's going to be there, could you say if Mr. German Figueroa would form part of the list of candidates? And is he likely to form part of the government should the APNU win the elections?
I have always said that there's a place for German Figuera in the PNCR and the APNU.
All right.
Is he part of the list of candidates? I don't think I got that clearly.
Well, at least up until now, he hasn't signed, but once he is disposed to becoming a member of the list, he will be.
When you look at, I think recently there was another resignation, St. Louis, if I got it correct, another MP. But speaking in general, when you talk to some members of the PNCR or APNU, some of them have said that they feel sidelined because of position taken, statements made, or for reasons they don't know. What have you done to address this particular concern? A number of persons, maybe two, three, four, I don't know, but this is an allegation, and I think you're aware of the allegation of people within the PNCR, members of parliament, saying that they felt sidelined by you.
All I would say to you, you talk about allegation, but you only mention one alligator. That is Natasha St. Louis. I've made my position.
Well, I referenced her resigning.
All right,
But
let me deal with it.
MP Amanda Walton said she felt sidelined, and that is what led her to the point of resigning and forming her own party. That there wasn't a place for her in a sense.
Okay, let me deal with the two.
And
Let me deal with the two that you have mentioned. Would you permit me?
Yes, she does.
Sister Norton, of course.
Okay, then. Natasha St. Louis has been in the party. When I became leader and we started to do our outreach work, she was working with us. And then suddenly she decided she wasn't going to work with us. I engaged her, and when I met her, she said to me in clear terms that she stopped engaging because Amna Ali, who is her friend, told her that if she continues to engage with Aubrey Norton and the leadership of the PNC, the friendship will end. She said to me that she doesn't want to end the friendship with Amna Ali, and I didn't force her to. So in my book, she sidelined herself. It was her personal decision. The party at no stage sidelined it her. As it relates to Amanza Walton, the information is out there. I have engaged Amanza on numerous occasions. I have, if you look at it, the information we put out, on the 7th day of June, I engaged Amanza Walton. We spoke. She asked me a direct question if she would be attracted from the list in the presence of David Hales. And I told her yes. We talk about her involvement. She left saying, I'm going to go and consult with my people and I will get back to you. This was on the 7th of June. If you go to the establishment of her party, for the want of a better word, you would recognize that she established that on the 6th. So when she was speaking to me, she had already made a decision. Now, I do not hold brief for anyone. I have engaged virtually all the persons to query from them whether they had an interest in being in the list, etc. And I have attempted to sideline no one. However, I would say that sometimes, especially when you're dealing with foreign policy, if you do not get the reports from people who are involved, it can be detrimental. All I would say to you, I have engaged, I have sought to engage continuously, but some people decided that they will carry a particular position. I don't have any problem with that. I believe, like David Granger said, if Norton goes now, what effect it will have on the PNC? The PNC is an institution. It has structures across this country. And the most powerful person that I recall ever left the PNC was Hamilton Green. The two people you were talking about are people who were not members of parliament members of the PNC in 2020. They joined the PNC after they became members of parliament. I do not know how they can impact the PNC. Hamilton Green, who I have a lot of respect for, who we've worked with over the years, is the most powerful person that would have left the PNC. And in a general election, his impact did not affect the PNC. And I shouldn't say left the PNC, because Hamilton Green was expelled. And it is different if you would have left and have been expelled. So I do not see those things impacted the PNCR. The PNCR is a national institution with persons in every region. They will do their political work and achieve the success we're seeking.
Thank you.
On
Yeah.
another, I
Oh,
will
sorry.
ask another question. I don't think I saw a release from APNU, but I read somewhere that the APNU attracted 2 additional parties. Could you address that? Give us insight as to, who are these parties, or, who are the people behind the parties?
Liberal, we have
Liberation Movement.
Liberal
Kingdom.
Kingdom Liberation Movement, which are representatives from various churches. They have been working on the ground in various communities. They have been engaging us for more than a year now, and we finally agreed we will work with them. We also have Movement for Improvement, which has some amount of influence on the East Coast. That is led by, I think, Sheikh Yassin. And we've been engaging with him, and we agreed that they will be part of it. Then there is
Liberation.
Cannabis Guyana.
Yeah.
Now, there are those who I've seen online trying to suggest legalize Cannabis Guyana. There are those online who are trying to suggest that their inclusion is aimed at legalizing marijuana. That's an issue that is long going in Guyana and will have to be addressed. But I can say this to you. We engage them, one, because they are very influential in the Rastafarian community, and we are working with them in the Rastafarian community. They also have an interest in hemp, which is legal in Guyana and is teamed with potential for development, and they have expressed an interest in working in that area. And we thought that all Guyanese who are interested should be included once their ideas are not in their ideas and philosophy are not inconsistent with our ideas and philosophy. And in that regard, we have engaged them, and they will continue to be part of the APNU. Remember, we are working as a group, but people also have their individual distinctiveness. I think those are the three that would have joined us.
Yeah.
The others are those who were there before.
Thank you.
Sir, if I may, Janika, please.
Go ahead, Mr. Harris.
Um, Now, since, well, you're doing more than fan out, I think, have you been more buoyed by your interactions in the various parts of the country? Have you been getting the kind of feeling? Because you did talk about the PPP supporters being somewhat disillusioned with the PPP. What impact has that had on you during your trips around the country meeting with people?
A good question, Adam. We have been engaging. We have engaged a lot of persons who are helping us behind the scenes. The big problem you have with a lot of people who want to help you is that the PPP instill fear, and many of them are afraid of the People's Progressive Party. But the impression we gain is that they will do the right thing on the day, and we gain the impression that some of them will stay home because the PPP has the tendency to put this is one of the worry with staying home, that the PPP has a tendency to put a tent outside of where the polling station is, and they check to see who didn't come, and then they go and coerce them to come in. So they have that concern. But we have been meeting the community, the communities we have been engaging. We have been having good response. We went to Parika, and in the engagement, many Indo-Guyanese made it very clear that they were not going to support the PPP and that they were expressing support for us. But there is always this thing where the PPP is so brutal, the PPP is so vindictive that many of them are afraid to come out in the open.
If I could ask two other questions.
Feel free, my dear.
Mr. Norton, would a Norton administration support the decriminalization of marijuana for recreational religious use? And secondly, I saw that there were objections to a symbol used by the Reinvest in Nationhood Win Party. Does the APNU have a similar concern with regards to the use of that symbol, the jaguar?
Let us deal first of all with marijuana. In my discussions with the party, I made it clear to them that, look, one, we have to address the issue. That two, there is addictive marijuana and there's medicinal marijuana. That issue will have to be addressed. That three, there are other actors in the country who are for, there are other actors who are against. And that we will have to engage with all the stakeholders and arrive at what kind of decision we would make. Now, as it relates to the symbol, I don't think the issue is the symbol. The PPP is just disingenuous. It is a reflection of the nature of the likes of Barra Jack Deo. Now, I'm not saying T. Mohammed has a right to use it or should use it. I'm saying this was a symbol used in an election before while the PPP was in charge of government, and you didn't object to it. Now that Azruddin is using it, you are objecting. That says to me the objection has nothing to do with patriotism. The PPP doesn't care about anything patriotic. Look at them when you go to a function. They can't sing a national song. Some have problems with the pledge. So I wouldn't get into whether it is right or wrong. It has been done. And the people who are now talking, they have not shown any patriotism. And therefore, for me, we have to have clear policies. What is our policy on national symbols? And then we can move in that direction. But to conveniently come because one of your opponents using it, when you allowed Roar to use it years ago, is indicative and symptomatic of the hypocrisy of Jagdeo and the People's Progressive Party. They have no interest in whether it's a national symbol or not. Their whole focus is to come up against an opponent. So I wouldn't comment on whether he should use it or not. For me, it is pure political vindictiveness, pettiness, and a reflection sometimes of how low the People Progressive Party can go. They have no interest in anything about the symbol. And as I'm here, let me add this. I believe that Barra Jagdeo is going mad. Some mental problem exists. Why would this, I will save the description. Why would he suggest that David Granger was wrong to endorse the party that David Granger was a member of and a leader in? It is a contemptuousness that characterizes this spin doctor, this failed president. What programs he is talking about that exists that should cause Granger to endorse Ali? A Heroes Highway which you're fixing in less than 2 years? That is what you want to be endorsed? 40% of our resources going to corruption? If it is one thing you can say about Granger, he was never accused of being involved in corruption. Why would he endorse a political party that is the summit of corruption in this country and probably in the Caribbean? And that is why I say this man has the audacity to make comments such as that. Do you want him to endorse a man who cannot build a proper road that causes a Secretary of State to embarrass Guyana by calling it Concussion Road? That is what should be endorsed. Do you want him to endorse a government that covers up the murder of an 11-year-old child? Do you want him to endorse a police force, a government that controls a police force, that covers crime, that refuses to give an autopsy report to either the family or other professionals who can look at it? That is what Jagdeo is asking people to, Granger, to endorse. There is no similarities, or little if any, between the PPP and what David Granger pursued. David Granger sought to ensure school children had access to transportation to go to school, buses, boats, bicycles. Barra Jagdeo and his puppet Irfan Ali, they come and got all the buses parked all over their place while the children are punishing to go to school? Do you want him to endorse people who claim that they were going to revitalize the sugar industry, and the sugar industry has gotten worse? There is little or no success under this administration. David Granger gives 77.7% increases in wages without oil. You with oil, in 5 years, the total add up to 40%. Do you want him to endorse this inept regime that does not have the interests of the people at heart and are prepared to put millions and billions of dollars in the likes of critic hands at the expense of the people of Guyana? I think this man is mad, ridiculous, and he just needs to go in peace.
Mr. Norton, since you brought up Mr. Granger, to address that, I guess what Mr. Jackie said, have you been in a discussion with Mr. Granger? Have you spoken to him recently, given that you're preparing for general and regional elections, maybe, I guess, to seek advice? Or is he likely to join you on the campaign trail, maybe at least once or twice? I don't know. Is that something you've given thought?
As far as I'm aware, from the engagements I have had, former President Granger will support us, but for a while he has not been coming into the public domain. Follow what we have done. We have always, from the time I became leader of the opposition, I said to all members of parliament, we must highlight the work that David Granger did. And we have done that. David Granger is, but in our assessment, the 5 years that he managed Guyana, he managed it properly. Guyana was moving upwards. And so Granger continues to be an asset. I still read many of the publications he would have produced at the time, and I look at the reports that was done under him on Guyana, and a lot of the policies we would have arrived at would have been informed by that. So while I would say to you that there isn't a one-on-one contact in recent times, we in the PNC subscribe to his philosophy. We have looked at his period in government. We knew what were his strengths. We knew what were his weaknesses. We're seeking to build on his strengths and to minimize whatever effects weaknesses will have. I don't think he sees himself as a jack. I don't think he knows it all. And he is God sent.
Thank you.
Just 3 other questions from me.
3 questions.
Going back to the symbol,
Go ahead.
is there a legal regime governing the use of symbols, based on your knowledge? And is the jaguar, in your view, a national symbol? That's one. Secondly, do you think that the win, Azruddin Mohammed's party, pose a threat to the PNC, our support base? And finally, do you think win, I'll call the party win,
do you recall what? I didn't hear that. Do I recall what?
The final, I'm referencing to Mr. Mohammed's party win. Mm-hmm. Do you think it will be a strategic value to the PPP by attracting PPP supporters that should the APNU win government, it will become a minority government?
Okay. Let us start with the symbol. I don't know of a regime that exists to cover symbols. What I do know is that a number of conventions have emerged over the years in which you avoided using those symbols. But like I said, because the PPP encouraged it before, they can't now come and say no. It means they are hypocrites. It is the normal two-mouth, two-faced jack deal. First point. Now, if T. Mohammed is a threat, I've been in politics since 1972. And one of the things I learned, if you have opponents, you treat all of them as if they are likely to get your support and work assiduously to ensure you maintain your support and increase with the people who he is likely to get. I don't necessarily see it as a threat, but what I see is the need for us to do the work to ensure that we prevail. The third thing that you said about a strategic move, you don't rule out anything with the PPP. I don't want to cast any aspersions on T. Mohammed, but Jagdo makes deals with the devil. He's not somebody who you can look for a moral compass. He's a devil dealer. And a devil dealer can deal with anybody. Now, it might very well be, I do not know, that the decision was made for T. Mohammed to come because the PPP felt they were losing ground and he can get some of the votes that they would have lost. That is a possibility. I don't know. However, as a politician, I prepare for every eventuality.
My question, sir. Shanika, is okay?
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Harris.
My question, sir. Following your meeting with the diplomatic community, there was a report that you invited T. Mohammed for talks. Is that true? And if that is the case, what is your relationship with T. Mohammed?
No, we have not invited T. Mohammed for talks. We have had no relationship with T. Mohammed. But as a political party, we are obligated to know what T. Mohammed is doing. And we obviously will put mechanisms in place to do that. We consider him to be a contestant, and therefore we have to keep what is happening under constant review. But as far as I'm aware, we are not in contact as a party with T. Mohammed.
Thank you. All right. If anybody has one more question, I'll take that, and then we'll close.
Larry Paris for the Guyana Chronicle. Can I go ahead?
Yes, you may.
Mr. Norton, last week you mentioned that Mr. Mahipal would be a part of the campaign team. However, so far the party has only promoted yourself and Ms. Jarita. Has there been a change in the frontline team?
Not to my knowledge, and I don't agree with your conclusion that we have only promoted Jaretta and myself. My Paul has been actively involved, and it is we who will determine how we put out our positions. My Paul continues to be a critical actor, important actor in the PNCR and the APNU. And so I find the question really not in sync with reality.
Thank you. All right. I want to thank our media personnel for joining today's press conference, and of course, our viewing audience on all our social media platforms. We do hope that you enjoy this weekend.